this is Bob from BBD with a news section where I'm interviewing a young guest. He's Kanav, did his schooling from DPS, St. Stephens, Georgetown, and now works in the United States. Important to note here is that this is our diaspora that is, and the youth that is actually giving its view from overseas, which is actually important for this government to know. And in that, I'm going to read out something and then I'm going to ask him some questions on that, on a topic that is close to my heart, because I think it goes to the core of education, goes to the core of our ability to innovate. If there is no liberty and there is no freedom of expression at the levels of schools and universities, we really are not going to get into the research and development phase, and if we want to get to the next level of development, it's not going to happen. The old Guru Shishya method of finger wagging, not. So first, there is an article here by G. Rajkumar which says the role of the university. The important statement there is, by academic freedom I understand the right to search for truth and to publish and teach what one holds to be true. The right also implies a duty. One must not conceal any part of what has been recognized to be true. At the outset, it needs to be mentioned that academic freedom is fundamental to any university in the world. So, on the back of why this is being said, is this article, is what happened in Ashoka University, where earlier Vice Chancellor, later Professor Bhanu Pratap resigned. And subsequently, not even Bhanu Pratap, but even Arvind Subramaniam, another professor who was there, resigned. So, and then students, as I was saying, Ashoka students then took it upon themselves. They called for a 2-day strike to call for press for Pratap Bhanu's reinstatement. You have this Ashoka students seek return of professor, and then you had Raghuram Rajan also come out in support of freedom in academics and universities, where he says must provide a protected space to each academician. And here is now what I'm going to ask my friend here is, what does he think? What does he think? Why the universities in the United States have been able to deliver excellence at a particular, I mean at the top level, while most universities in India have not done so?
First, I would add that because most of my views have been shaped by our discussions, I'll try to stay more, I guess, balanced on the issue. But the American institutions have had a lot longer to reach this stage, and they're still not perfect. I feel like this concept of private universities and private liberal arts universities is newer to India, and we already know our government and the challenges that we face. So this is something that I guess was expected. It's unfortunate, but I feel like you have to go through this phase to reach the next phase and a better phase. So I don't think the US is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I went to Georgetown, so I've had a different experience, but I'm sure if you, and I've read about this in certain parts of the country as well, if you go to states like Oklahoma, if you go to states which are more red, right, you will have professors that are talking about politics in a far different way and bring up politics in a far different way than they do in cities like Washington DC and Boston and wherever I have lived. So I'm sure this experience is just, we think that the US is far different because a lot of people that we know, and I guess a lot of our friends and kids that we grew up with, they went to more liberal cities and they went to more liberal colleges as well. But I don't think it's isolated to just India as such, but India does have a longer way to go than the US.
Okay, so here's an honest answer. What do you think currently? I mean, I know the coverage has been fairly negative. So you think that we do have an opportunity opportunity to recover? And what are your friends who've been to Ashoka saying about it?
So we do have an opportunity to recover, mainly because you're seeing the outpouring that that you're reading about post these events, and the fact that there is an outpouring, and the fact that the students have collected to ask for the reinforcement of these professors just goes to show that there is obviously more than a large section of the population that does understand that you need freedom of expression in education in particular, and in the country in general. And it's good that the younger people are organizing more so, because we have so many young people in this country that the more they organize as we move on generation to generation, I think we will reach the stage that America has reached and hopefully cross it as well. I don't think people realize how new a country this is. We only got independence for 70 or so, which is not, it's not the longest of times, right? America has had 200 plus years to reach the stage it has reached, and you still see the flaws in its system. So it's just I guess a gradual process, but with the internet and social media, people keep becoming more and more impatient, which I understand. But I do think eventually we will get there. Yeah.
Okay, so on that call, I think this is the topic. This is what we close here on this. So basically, that's a balanced view. Obviously, it's critical that academic freedom is just the absolute necessity for development and growth and evolution and research, especially research. Cheers. I'm going to give it up to Kanav for a closing remark, because he is the future of this country. I mean, the youth is the future of this country, because I think most of us obviously have been compromised, that we are not willing to take a stand. So, Kanav.
So I would close with this, that there obviously needs to be freedom of expression in education. You have to create the culture in a classroom where you can discuss each and every issue relating to politics, religion, and you should have the freedom to discuss it openly and honestly, and obviously that is the basis of a democracy. But the one thing that I would like to add is that for professors, they do kind of have a responsibility as well, whereby they express their views, they express their opinions, you have the discussion, but you have to have that balance where you don't impose your views on the students, because that could be dangerous as well. So like similarly, like we keep fighting for freedom of expression, and we may be on one side of the political spectrum. There are obviously people on the other side of the political spectrum, and you have to allow them the space to be on that side as well. You can't force them on the other side. So it is a balance. I would have loved to be in those classes to see exactly how it was going down and what the discussions were. But you have to kind of maintain that balance where you don't force your opinions and views on anybody. So there is that line still that I feel like a professor should not cross. But to kind of for the administration to take drastic steps like removing them from their jobs is not something that should happen just over political disagreements, or being I would say they were probably scared of the political party in power, which is a sad state of affairs.
But just quickly to correct him a little bit, which I just learned today, they were not effectively removed. The pressure came actually from the trustees, which was actually the wrong thing, because the trustees were a lot more conservative. Cheers. Welcome back, folks. So in conclusion, you got the view from a youngster who studied both here and the United States, seen the goods of India, seen the bad of India, seen the good of India, and seeing the terrible of the United States after what happened during the Trump's time, and he was there through the entire period, folks. So what do we have here? Essentially, Ashoka University, the first of its kind, a liberal university, an experience, like he said, the first one. So this was to be expected. I give him that. Now let's see what Gurcharan Das writes. A tale of two heroes. He says, Pratap Bhanu Mehta, professor of political science and passionate critic of government, resigned from Ashoka University last week because he felt he'd become a political liability. The media has portrayed it as a morality tale of good versus evil, but in fact it's a tragedy. It's a tale of two modern Indian heroes, one courageously showing truth to power, the other idealistically trying to build a better world. Both performed the duties, doing what he had to do. But it all ended badly. The tragic flaw was not the rottenness of the court of Denmark, but the imperfect world outside an authoritarian state, tribal political parties, uncivil wars in an age of hatred, forces beyond the hero's control. The first hero is Ashish Dhawan, had a dream to create a world-class non-profit liberal arts university with half the students on free scholarship. He came back, St. Xavier's Calcutta, he went to Harvard, came back, started Price's Cap, came back and then did this. The other hero of the story is Pratap Mehta, who also is very similar, right? No one seemed to know why Mehta resigned. I discovered there hadn't been any pressure from the government. Many of the 150 donors of Ashoka, however, were offended by Mehta's weekly bashing of PM Modi and the state. Not surprising, donors are conservative. The university worried that if funding dried up, the university might have to cut scholarships, raise tuition fees, freeze faculty salaries, chop new academic programs. Still, no one asked Mehta to resign or to stop writing. But Mehta himself began slowly to realize that he was becoming a political liability. In an act of integrity, he resigned. Dhawan had a mixed feeling. As a genuine liberal committed to dissent, he felt sad, but as a protector of his baby, he felt relieved. The tragedy then is this. Two good men, both doing their duty, were caught between conflicting loyalties, ended in wounding a promising fledgling institution. Ashoka has been diminished in the global academic world. It won't be easy to attract world-class faculty in the future. The tragedy is bigger. India desperately needs to create world-class institutions, and this is a setback to the nation's ambitions, like I pointed out, right? But if you take a longer view like Kanav did, this had to happen, he says. However, now what has happened is a firewall is being erected between the founders and the institution. An ombudsman is being appointed, right? And this is what's happened and it's come back. It says, Ashoka VC assures students of nominees at board meetings. You will be able to communicate all student-related decisions of the Board of Management once the minutes are confirmed and shared with you, the VC said. The other is, won't interfere in varsity functioning, faculty freedom, Ashoka trustees. Now, this is the most important part of it. Our aim is that though that this an already existing process, we will be able to ensure the Ashoka lives up to his vision of being a space for free inquiry, free expression, intellectual honesty, respect for the dignity of all human beings, and openness to constructive change. Jay, and folks, one second. And when an incident like this happens, right? So when you have Amit Khare, who's the government has decided to, has basically comes up, when you have this, is a center eyes getting more foreign students. Now here is where the challenge is, folks. You really cannot have a situation like what happened to Ashoka University, because the way it plays out globally, that reduces the ability for India to attract not only students, but also faculty, which are both going to be critical now as we take the next step forward to our global ambitions and growth. Jai Hind.